Apart from horror, my go-to genre would have to be thrillers. Mystery thrillers, detective thrillers. There's something inherently engaging about piecing a well-constructed puzzle of a movie together. And some of the best types of these movies come from South Korea. Memories of Murder, Oldboy, The Wailing, all incredible mysteries with the perfect amount of horror sprinkled throughout. And as is almost tradition at this point on this channel, after rewatching The Wailing, I decided to take a look into the filmography of Na Hong-jin to see if there was anything worthwhile to watch. But surprisingly, I didn't find much. Na Hong-jin has only directed a total of 3 feature films, with a 4th on the way, which shocked me. The Wailing is such a tightly crafted film, I assumed he had been working for a long time to build up his talents, but it did make going through his films a lot easier than some of the other directors I've looked at. So naturally, I started at the beginning. It was a film I'd never heard of, a film that's both subversive and disturbing, a mystery unlike any I had ever seen before. I'm Nightmare Movies, and today I want to talk about 2008's The Chaser. Now, similar to the way we're thrown into an unorthodox setting in The Wailing, The Chaser throws us into the unique underground world of escorts. We get introduced to our protagonist, Jung-ho. Together with his one employee, they run an escort service, but their business isn't doing so well. 2 of his girls have ran away after receiving their advances, and we get to see firsthand why they would do so. This isn't exactly a safe career for these women. In the very next scene, Jung-ho sends one of his escorts over to a motel where she catches her client trying to sneak pictures of her. Insulting the man after being completely humiliated, she walks down the hallway to leave, only to be chased by the man. This is the kind of world that we're dealing with. Jung-ho arrives quickly after and discovers the motel staff restraining the client. And inside the room, we see the woman getting dressed, and more importantly, the aftermath of the fight. Without saying a word to Jung-ho, she leaves, and we get to see a little humanity from him. He takes the man back into the motel room and gives him a taste of his own medicine, slapping him, humiliating him, and ultimately extorting him. I wouldn't go so far as to say Jung-ho is a good person, but it is apparent that there's a side of him that doesn't want to see these women hurt. Maybe it's his own pride knowing he's responsible for them, or maybe it's empathy. Either way, it's not enough for yet another one of his girls to quit on him. In the car, the 2 of them discuss the girls who have gone missing. Jung-ho saying that they ran away and he can't report it to the police because obviously what they're doing isn't legal. But she believes that there's something much darker going on. And she tells him that he should know this. He used to be a detective, another important detail. Regardless, Jung-ho still needs to make money, so he rings Mi-jin, one of his girls who called out sick. Her daughter brings her the phone, and Jung-ho forces her to go out and see a client. And this is where we're going to get into some dark stuff, so brace yourself. After Mi-jin gets picked up by her client, Jung-ho notices that the same number ending in 4885 has called before, and directly ties it to his 2 missing girls. He believes that whoever this man is taking his girls and trafficking them, so he decides to call Mi-jin and give her instructions to memorize the address and relay it back to him from the bathroom. This way he can come and confront the man. They arrive at the client's house and she takes note of the street address. As she enters, the man goes and sits on the couch, and Mi-jin tells him that she's gonna go shower and freshen up. Once inside, she turns on the shower and tries to text Jung-ho the address, but something's wrong. Her text isn't sending. She notices a window and thinks to open it to get better service. So Mi-jin, with no other way out, walks back into the living room and tells the man that she forgot the condom in the car. She asks if it's okay if she goes and grabs it, and he nonchalantly excuses her, but it doesn't look like she's going to be leaving anytime soon. Now, I definitely can't show what happens next. It's a little too disturbing and graphic for YouTube, but I'll explain as best I can. Mi-jin is hogtied in the bathroom. The man enters with a large bag and dumps a load of tools on the ground next to her. He tells her that the last girl kept screaming, so he had to cut her tongue out. From the pile of tools, the man picks up a chisel and puts it at the base of her skull, pulls out a hammer, and for the next 4 minutes, we watch as Mi-jin flails on the floor, avoiding every attempt this man makes to sever her spinal cord, until finally, frustrated and done messing around, he hits her over the head with the hammer, before an older couple interrupts the man and immediately recognizes his dog as someone else's, one of his previous victims. So on top of his already hectic night, he now has to account for 2 more bodies, and a car that needs to get taken care of. But this is when our 2 worlds collide, literally. Jung-ho and the man get into a car accident and have backed up traffic along these tight, narrow streets. Jung-ho is politely trying to get the man's information, but he catches on that this man is in a bit of a rush. So Jung-ho calls 4885. A long chase takes place, ending with Jung-ho catching and beating the man. He brings them back to their cars where a comical amount of people are now backed up on these roads, and a police officer is shown up to control the chaos. But ultimately, the police officer takes both of them in for questioning, noticing the man's injuries. Now I just want to say we are currently 36 minutes and 50 seconds into an over 2-hour long film, a murder mystery where the killer is already in police custody. And not only that, within the next 5 minutes, the man has already confessed to murdering the women and 6 other people that the police have been investigating for years. So you're probably wondering what the rest of this movie is going to be, and this is where I want to give some cultural context. Now, I'm going to try and get this as correct as I can, and do correct me if I'm wrong or clarify in the comments. But from what I was able to research, in South Korea, the National Police Agency is highly controversial and criticized for a number of different reasons. Many times, police officers have been caught taking bribes, bringing to light some of the internal corruption within the police force. Excessive force during protests is also apparently a long-running issue. And most importantly for the film we're talking about, a lot of police investigations show bias when dealing with politically sensitive cases. This helps paint a better idea of certain Korean films for me, like Memories of Murder for instance, a film following some of the most incompetent police officers ever seen on screen, inspired by the real-life investigation of Korea's quote, first serial killer, an investigation that has been heavily criticized for how mishandled it was, from evidence being tainted and even the false imprisonment of a man for those crimes. Or we can even look at another film by Na Hong-jin. The Wailing also follows police officers who do a terrible job investigating a string of murders plaguing their town. And this is where I want to bring it back to The Chaser. After the first 40 minutes, the rest of the film is split into 3 perspectives. First, the police's investigation as they try to get information and evidence to get an arrest. And while doing this, they're also dealing with the public backlash over not protecting the mayor of Seoul from having literal shit thrown in his face. The second perspective is Jung-ho's as he does his own investigation to track down Mi-jin, which eventually leads him to her house where he finds Mi-jin's daughter, alone with a broken front door because of Jung-ho's incompetence, and he decides to take her along with him to keep her safe. And the surprising third perspective, Mi-jin, who has awoken in the bathroom and is now trying to escape. All of them are connected to a ticking clock. 12 hours to find any substantial evidence. Otherwise, this murderer will be released since he was arrested without a warrant. So this story is all about who's going to find Mi-jin first, and will she escape? The entire middle section is where we really get into some of the disturbing and frustrating sides of this film. Disturbing because we learn more details about this killer and how he operates, and frustrating because of the previously mentioned investigation techniques. Let's start with the disturbing. There's a major scene at almost exactly the halfway mark where Jung-ho tries to gain information about where the killer lives and where Mi-jin is through the man's sister. But she has no other information to give other than he was in prison for 3 years, and she hasn't spoken to him since. And why is that? Well, as they're having this conversation, the woman's son enters the living room. All across this boy's head are stitches from some sort of wound, and he's also clearly suffered some sort of brain damage as he urinates on the floor. His mother goes to comfort him, and we learn that this is the aftermath of leaving her son alone with her brother. This is why he spent 3 years in prison. And now we get to bring it back to the frustrating side. Intercut with Jung-ho's investigation are scenes in which the police are played and made to look like idiots time and time again. The man lies to the police, changing his story and creating all these paths that lead to nothing. On top of that, the police are actively telling each other to find evidence by any means, even if it means fabricating it. And all of this builds up to the climax of the film where our 3 perspectives collide in the most tragic way possible. Firstly, the man tells the police where he has supposedly buried some of the bodies. And upon morning, Jung-ho and the police go to dig up the whole area in hopes of finding any sort of evidence. But as they do, the 12 hours are up, and the man can go free. At almost the exact same time, Mi-jin has finally escaped her restraints. She crawls out of the window of the house and hides in a nearby convenience store, calling the police and Jung-ho, praying that someone comes to save her. And while Jung-ho is still looking for her, the police are not going to be coming. They're a little distracted digging up a dead end. And with a severe concussion stopping her from continuing, she just waits for help to arrive. But you can probably guess who shows up instead. The man enters the convenience store, finds that Mi-jin is here, and proceeds to kill the store owner and Mi-jin in one of the most upsetting scenes I've had to sit through. And I almost forgot to mention, there's a police officer tailing the man. As soon as he's released, this police officer stays no more than 100 feet away from this man, but as soon as he enters the convenience store, she just sits outside waiting for him to leave. But he never does, at least out of the front door. The man sneaks out of the convenience store through the back window and is gone with nothing but a pair of bodies left behind. This is when Jung-ho arrives, not only feeling that he directly caused this, but also realizing that she tried to reach out to him, but he didn't answer. It's a heartbreaking scene, and the biggest part of what makes this scene so tragic is looking back at all the opportunities they had to avoid this, starting at the very beginning by just not having Mi-jin go out. And now all that's left of her is her dismembered body and her poor orphaned daughter. But we're not done with the story yet. Jung-ho is able to track down the man to his house, and the two fight, with Jung-ho eventually gaining the upper hand. But just as he's about to get his revenge, the police finally enter and stop Jung-ho, arrest the man, and put an end to this tragic story. And that is The Chaser. This was honestly such a refreshing take on such a formulaic genre. If you're familiar with detective movies at all, you know how these stories typically go. The entire movie is essentially one or two guys going after a serial killer. And other than seeing how different killers operate in different movies, there's not that much that differentiates them. But like I said, 36 minutes and 50 seconds into this movie, we know who the serial killer is, and he is already in custody. And that's something genuinely unique. Even with that, the film never feels like it slows its pace. There's always things going on, new twists happening, new information being given to us, and I absolutely loved it. And like I said, if that sounds like something interesting, give it a shot. And with all that being said, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'm Nightmare Movies. And I'll see you all next time.